Yes, how is Gabriella? It's your guest appearance number 2.
It is.
This,
And I've been sort of walking around saying, oh, yeah, I was on this last year. And then I
yeah,
looked at it and it'll be 2 years in May, I think.
yeah.
Not just last year, it was the year before.
We started in the midst of lockdown and somehow we lost track of time. We're going on 3 years.
I know.
It's nearly 2 years. And I've been saying to people, oh, yeah, I was on it last year. I'm on again.
You're on again.
Yeah.
But you've done so much in the past year, even since we've chatted with you. And that's why we brought you back to discuss what you're doing, Gabriella. So tell us, who is Gabriella and what is a safeguarding trainer to start off?
Okay. So, I am Gabriella. I don't know what to say, really. I mean, I could have an existential crisis and try and figure out who I am, if you like. That's really thrown me. So no existential crises. Think about it logically. So yeah, basically my work is safeguarding training. I am someone who goes to church. I'm in church leadership. I like hanging out with my friends. I live with my cat and my tortoise, although he's asleep at the moment because it's hibernation. I like reading. I like music, theatre, all that kind of stuff. And I'm a small business owner. So, yeah, which is my safeguarding business. And my work is training people, be it carers, parents, frontline professionals, whoever, children themselves, about etc., all the stuff. So that's the really short version. And within that, there's lots and lots of different pieces of work that I do. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if you were cutting out a bit for Crystal, if it was just me, but let's jump straight into like something very specific. Because I saw the other day you posted something very interesting on LinkedIn and Facebook about people being groomed on Spotify. So obviously this is something that as a safeguarding, I mean, what safeguarding means is basically protecting children from abusers and people online. So talk a bit about that, because it's really kind of a very specific thing, and I think it really highlights the whole thing about what you do. Okay. So talk about that particular Spotify, because most people are like, how can you be groomed on Spotify?
Well, this is the thing. This is the thing. So I came across this when I was put in touch with the parent of an 11-year-old girl, and the family had discovered literally in the last, just after Christmas, the last couple of weeks, that their 11-year-old had been groomed on Spotify. And immediately everyone's like, how the hell do you do that?
Yeah.
But the way they discovered it was that the email address for the girl's Spotify account, only her parents could access it. That was their way of safeguarding her. And they'd done everything. Like, they were listening to everything she was listening to, all of the right things, very on top of all this stuff. But then there was an email come through that said her account had been shut down. And so they were like, we don't understand what's going on, etc. Realised there was some problems. We're very grateful to Spotify for closing it down. And what had actually happened is, in Spotify, you can create your own playlists and you can title them. So what groomers and paedophiles are doing is they are putting out playlists that are called Send Me Nudes or Upload Your Nude Pictures, etc., etc. And the other bit of it is when you create a playlist, you can upload a photo as the cover of that playlist. So that's where they're encouraging people to upload the photos. So what they do is they'll follow someone on Spotify. Then they'll invite them to follow the playlist that, and they start communicating.
Yeah. And
so this 11-year-old girl, this has been going on for a while. It had taken a long time initially for someone to persuade her. But then the problem is, once she'd been persuaded to upload something, she started getting lots of likes and lots of other follows, which, you're like, oh, I've got more people doing it. And then you're in this echo chamber of this is quite normal, because all the people following you were all asking for these photos to be uploaded. And she'd actually had 10 warnings that she'd been breaching Spotify rules by uploading explicit photos, and then they closed her account. But then what happened was the mum did a search and they'd closed the girl's account, but her playlists with the photos were still up. So Spotify has done this weird thing where they close the account but still leave the dodgy material up there. So they have now taken all of that down because the mum was really on it. But this has kind of opened up this kind of realization that this is what's happening, because, you know, it doesn't matter how on top of things you are. Most of us, myself as a safeguarding professional, have thought that Spotify is one of the safer ones.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's like, how do you communicate with people? And actually that's what they're doing. And then, so they will ask for nudes, and then the person they're asking will create a playlist with their photo as the cover. And that's how they're passing them on. So the police were informed straight away, and they hadn't heard of it. So it is like brand new stuff, basically, in terms of the awareness over here. I'm sort of helping the family a little bit, spreading the word and sort of supporting them a little bit, and doing some stuff in we've spoken to some journalists and bits and pieces trying to get the information out there. And I was actually on a call with the parents today, and Spotify kind of saying we were unaware that this kind of stuff was happening. But there is an article in the New York Post from last year talking about the fact that there is all of this imagery on Spotify, there's pornography on Spotify, and Spotify pretty much said the same thing. We were unaware that this was happening. We have software that looks out for it. We have a team of people who, you know, an enormous team of people who deal with all of this. And to be fair, the article talks about the fact there's pornography on there, not about the grooming as such, but they're not really doing enough. The fact that they can close an account but leave the stuff up there is really not enough. And so we're starting to work now on kind of getting the message out there, but also looking at contacting various people, MPs, etc., trying to get some proper changes made, bring some pressure to bear to Spotify. And the other problem that the family have encountered is that you can't really speak to anyone. On Spotify, you can only message them through their chat. And then they're like, oh, no, we're not the department to deal with that. We'll pass it on.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult. But yeah, that's what's happened. Thankfully, this particular family are brilliant. They've dealt with it absolutely the right way. Got in touch with the police, got the stuff taken down. Their daughter, they're making sure she's okay. They're looking after themselves. I mean, all of that stuff, they're sort of a very spot on family. The mum's a teacher, etc. So that, you know, but there's a lot of people out there. I mean, most people don't know this about Spotify, even if they're on top of online safety for other things. So there's a lot of work. It's you know, it's woken me up again to keep an eye out for the fact that any corner of the internet, any app, there will be paedophiles doing something.
Yeah.
There will be people in there somewhere.
Gabriella, I have a lot of questions, because I know if you're bringing this to our awareness, it's happening internationally. So I have a lot of questions about Spotify, because I had no idea this was a possibility. But I do want to let people know, in America, if you even think anything is happening with your child online, do not hesitate to call the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. I had a situation in my own life, and I happen to know how they work very specifically. I was hesitant to call at first, but they are thorough, and they are connected to the FBI, the CIA, and that's what you want in any kind of grooming situation. If you even think there's a red flag there there's a red flag there in your heart for some reason. So we do in America have the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. It's not for just when your child disappears. It's for grooming situations, even like this. And I say even, this can go really far. So do not, I'm saying that now before I forget to say that there is somewhere to call if nowhere else. But Gabriella, Spotify, what in the world?
I know.
Well, you explained how children can upload their pictures and it looks like a playlist. Where did they get in contact? Is it through email? Is there a chat? I guess I don't know enough.
No, what they're doing is they're using the title of the playlist, because you create a playlist, you can call it what you want. So they're using the title to pass a message. So the title is the communication. Now, if you invite someone to share a playlist, you can both change the title. So you can just keep changing it and message backwards and forwards. Or you create your own playlist with a message in the title and invite that person to follow it. But what's also happened is that one person, this little girl, let someone have her email address. So actually one of them emailed her and was asking all sorts of things as well. So people are using it to pass on other ways of communicating.
That's what I was wondering. So does the title become the email, or is there another way to communicate on Spotify that I'm unaware of?
No, that's the way their messaging is using the titles.
Wow.
And some of them have got a cover photo that explains how to do it.
Oh,
They're
my
using
word.
the cover photo as a way of, there's all sorts of things going on. Basically, if you can write something, be it a title, whatever, they will use that to communicate. And if you can upload a picture, it doesn't have to be a photo. It can be a picture with information. So that's what they're doing. And there's even some noise being made about how some of them are now communicating in this way to each other within the paedophile rings of like, actually, this is getting noticed. Be a bit more careful. So, yeah.
So is Spotify now doing something? Because they've got to be aware now. Are they doing something?
They've said that they are very keen for, these things not to happen, that within their rules, you're not supposed to upload sexually explicit photos. And therefore, that's why this girl's account was shut, for example. But it's not enough because they closed the account but left the stuff up there. And, what the parents were saying to me today was actually, it should almost be a thing of like, if it's flagged, it all gets closed off and then they get in contact with the account holder. And if the account holder can come back and explain, then they can release it again rather than, we've kind of blocked you out on Spotify, but all your stuff's still up there unless someone knows to look further and complain further. They're not doing it the right way round. It should all just be shut down. And then you have the conversation with the account holder. They're just not doing enough. But it's money, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the problem. And, one of the hashtags actually we're using is children over profit. That's the thing. Children matter more than that profit.
Where are you using this hashtag, Gabriella?
I'm starting to use it. It's being used. There's the TikTok advocate, I can't remember her name now, I'll have to look it up, on TikTok, who started using it. She's pushing stuff out on TikTok. This has only just really been breaking. I was only first in contact with the family just over a week or so ago. So I've only just started posting stuff since Friday because that's when I knew that they were okay for me to do that. So we're now trying to kind of build a bit of a platform with it.
Educate, absolutely educate across the world. Again, if it's happening in the UK, it's happening internationally. Absolutely, for sure.
And then on the flip side, I'm obviously adjusting my training and starting to put together some stuff that people can use. Because there's two things. One is we need to get the information out there like now. And then we need to think about integrating it into our training, into kind of what everyone gets refreshed on, learns about, etc. So I'm putting together some download stuff for foster care agencies to kind of disseminate out to their foster carers. I'll be putting some stuff together for schools to do the same. Just kind of, in a way, quick fix. You need to know this. And then let's go a bit further in terms of training and stuff with it, as more information comes out.
Absolutely. Awareness, education, and get rid of it. Absolutely.
Yeah. The sad thing is we know that these people are always going to be a step ahead. So we need to be keeping an eye out for this stuff all the time and keeping it constantly, like the possibility is kind of in our head. And really, once people know, pass the message on, talk to our kids about it, ask them questions, help them to understand the consequences of what they're doing. There's a whole massive piece behind all of it in terms of self-esteem and the whole I want to be liked on social media and all of those other things as well, mental health behind all this. I mean, once you start peeling back a few layers, the whole subject is vast. But the key thing right now is we've effectively discovered something that hasn't been out there. The fact that the police had never heard of it before says a lot. So we need to just get the message out there at the moment. This is happening. Check your kids' Spotify. Check your Amazon Music or your Apple Music as well, because the same sort of things can happen. I'm not so au fait on those two, and I need to, because I don't use them myself. I'm pretty sure on Amazon you can't upload artwork, but they can still communicate, I think. Don't quote me on that. The last sort of few days have been a bit of a whirlwind. But actually, where we think, oh, it's just a listening platform, there are ways to communicate. And that's what we need to think about.
Gabrielle, I want to ask you, let's go back to the basic principle of what does grooming look like? Because every once in a while I see it pop up, I see an article, but I have to be honest, I don't think I've seen anything in a while. And it's really important for parents and educators to understand what grooming even is, and more specifically, what does it look like?
I mean, that is a huge question, because there are sort of certain things that are kind of, this is what grooming is, but it can look as different as the individual, because someone who wants to groom somebody will key into that person's insecurities or their wants or their needs and play on those. So it's always a little bit tailored as well. But it can be as simple as, say, for example, online, someone pretending to be, say, a child when they're actually an adult, and building up a friendship, building up trust, and then sort of maybe sharing something. Oh, this is my secret. What's your secret? And it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. It can be building up a bit of a friendship and then gifting somebody with things, so then they feel a bit in debt to the person who's grooming them. And sometimes, and quite often, it can then, that person sort of turns nasty and becomes controlling, but with that person, that time they've got the control of the person. It can be, I mean, it's just kind of building up that kind of dependence, and also pulling them away from other people around them. So that they're kind of losing their stability or that point of view, and they feel like the groomer is probably the only person they can trust, for example. I know that I experienced it when I was married, and one of the leadership of the church that I was in, the pastor would sort of say things to me like, you come across quite intimidating to some people, but I know your heart, I've got your back. And you start to not trust the people around you, and then that person has more control. So there's all sorts of kind of little ways that it's done, but the essence is that you come under the enthrall of the person, and you start to break away that person's support network. So they're trusting the groomer, they need the groomer, or they've persuaded you to maybe share something, and then it becomes a threat if you don't. For example, if it's nude photos, right? You've sent me this one. If you don't send me 3 more, I'll show this to your parents, or I'll put this publicly online so that people can track you down. So it can turn from friendship into threats as well, a way of control. And it can be really, really slow. You don't even realize it's happening.
That line you said about your pastor, that's so key, because it's that one line that creates a trust between you and a groomer, and takes you away from everyone else, because you now no longer trust anyone around you.
Just to say, pastor from years ago, not where I am now.
Absolutely.
Are you trying to? Are you going to be changing your playlist to "Please Rescue Me"?
Be very careful to say it is not. This is not current. This is
not where I am now.
Many years ago. We know this. Many years ago. Very careful to say.
I suppose some people would say, I'm going to play devil's advocate here, but how important is the actual education of the child in terms of these threats? Because you're always going out playing whack-a-mole. There could be some new bit of software that somebody released, and you can switch the pictures around, and you can do the thing. How important is it actually to get the child to recognise it's like, oh, this random person off the internet is changing up? This is not normal. I mean, there should be. And is that something that you help parents and children with?
It's 1,000% key.
Yeah.
And one of the things is that we can be very keen, and I was talking about this to the parents of this girl earlier as well, and I've seen it so often. We can be so keen to preserve our children's childhoods that we put them in danger.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to tell them these things that kind of take away their innocence. But if they're not somehow prepared, then their innocence could be taken away in a far worse kind of way. And these things are happening. So if they're happening to children, children need to know about it. And I think some of it is certainly about the confidence in terms of the language to use and how much to say, how to say it. But also, certainly in the training that I do, I talk about the fact that there is that whole warn children, tell them about all these things that are happening. But the flip side is teaching them about healthy friendships, healthy relationships, what's good, so that when something isn't healthy, it kind of stands out to them. So that's where self-esteem really matters, knowing that they're loved, knowing that they're cared for. That's why predators will home in on people who are more vulnerable.
Mm.
Because they can't recognize so clearly when something's not good, or because they need someone so much, because they're not secure in themselves, they can get swept up a lot more. Maybe they don't trust their own judgment because they're not, very secure about themselves, not very confident. So actually confidence, knowledge, understanding of the healthy side of things as well, all of those things contribute. And quite often, for example, with really little kids, they do a lot on sort of what a good friendship is when they're learning about bullying.
Yeah.
And that's really important right the way through. What's a healthy relationship? How should you be treated by somebody? Do you understand that you deserve to be treated well? And that's why when I said there are so many layers, you start entering into like mental health issues and all of the stuff, basically. So it's all really, really important. But as far as I'm concerned, you start talking to them about it from dot, really, in age appropriate ways.
Yeah.
And certainly I've done that in schools. In one of my jobs, we were teaching children from the age of 4 what the different types of abuse is.
Yeah.
In age appropriate language, but they knew what those different things were. I would say the other thing as well too is this whole thing of naming body parts by nicknames, which all sound very cute and everything, but if something happens to a child and they're trying to describe it to someone in authority by these cute nicknames, it doesn't kind of, it's not as easy to interpret or figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
And there's nothing rude about using body part names. But we get really uncomfortable with that.
Yeah. No, it's
not. I like that you brought up, you start training at 4. Here in America, it's in preschool. We start as simple as you don't have to be friends with the one mean person. There's a whole classroom of friendships you can have out there. Starting with that. But Gabriella, I want to ask you also, so often we think grooming is only girls.
Right.
But as a parent of boys, I know this is not the case. What can you offer in terms of education for how grooming works with boys, how it might look different and how it's actually happening?
I mean, in many respects, a lot of the basic things are exactly the same. They might be using different enticements. We had the Brett Bednar case over here. I don't know if you'd heard of it, Christelle. Tim, you may well have done. The boy who was actually murdered because he was playing an online game with some friends, and this guy ended up murdering him, and he ended up being kind of enticed to the guy's flat.
Yeah.
And then he was murdered. I can't remember how long ago it was now. It's probably Gosh, I mean, I lose track of time. I thought I'd spoken to you guys last year and it was the year before.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It was sort of 2014, 15, I can't remember, around that kind of time. And there is actually the Brett Bednar Foundation that does a lot of work around that. But it's really, grooming is grooming. It might just be what entices somebody. But boys have just as many self-esteem issues. They may even have more difficulty talking about things because girls just are kind of taught to talk more, which is entirely wrong. But it's all pretty much the same, to be perfectly honest. They might also be groomed into slightly different things. That's not to say they're not groomed into sexual abuse and things, but perhaps groomed more into like, what's the word I'm looking for? Say with the drugs running stuff and what we call county lines over here, all of those kinds of things. But equally, boys get sexually abused as well. You have a whole other area of other gendered young people as well, and their vulnerabilities, children who are transgender or gender fluid, and then they have a whole other set of things because maybe they're struggling with their identity in different ways, and that makes them vulnerable to someone who's going to really accept them. So really everything that can be weakness is the wrong word, anything that can be a vulnerability can be used by someone who wants to groom somebody.
I think a key trait that I've noticed that is very common with the young people around me is loneliness.
Yeah.
And if you can tap into that loneliness and suddenly they have a friend online, that's something to be very, very aware of.
Yeah, that's that whole vulnerability piece, feeling like they don't belong somewhere, feeling like they're not known, understood, seen.
Yeah.
And we know we have an epidemic of loneliness as well. And so that can feed into adults as well. There's a lot of vulnerable adults and you know, slightly differently, but that can turn into exploitation in terms of money. But also all of the things we talk about with children, there are adults who get exploited into that kind of stuff as well, without question. You know, that happens. So vulnerabilities get exploited, basically, and these people are clever, unfortunately.
Yeah. So to kind of wrap up the show in a long-winded way, let's say somebody's watching the show, hypothetical person who's just got like 1 or 2 year old kids or whatever, even and now they're absolutely worried hell about what can they do to protect their child. What would you say? What resources? Where can they go? I mean, obviously they could hire you, but I mean that's excessive from a parental level. But what are the kind of key takeaways in terms of how they should, like, if you're starting early with your kids, things like, I mean, I've never had kids, but I'm quite glad in a way that I've never had to have this decision about what age they could have a mobile phone and that kind of thing.
Well, it certainly should be 2.
Well, no, yeah, exactly. But you can see that some of them could get to like 6 or 7, and it's like, oh, and it's like, well, do you really want a kid at 6 to have a mobile phone? So what advice would you give to somebody in that position in terms of just basic principles of safeguarding?
I would say when you're talking about very, very young, the key thing is to really help your kids know how loved they are, no matter what. That is such a key foundation. But in terms of sort of abuse and things, even from very, very small, we can respect their bodily autonomy. So if a child doesn't want to be hugged, that should be okay. And that's not saying that, say, your family, for example, are all a bunch of, you know, creeps and paedophiles. But if you've got a child who doesn't want auntie whoever to give them a kiss goodnight, that's got to be okay. Because otherwise they're already learning that if somebody in authority tells them they have to let somebody touch their body, that's okay.
Yeah.
Which sets them up later. So even really small things like that are really, really important. And for example, I mean, in terms of resources in this country, I would certainly say the NSPCC, they've got a thing called the pants rule.
Yeah.
Which is how they talk to younger children about what's covered by your underwear are your private parts, and nobody should be touching those. And all those little things where you're teaching them that if they say no, that has to be enough. And we're not teaching them to be sport brats.
Yeah.
we're not, but in terms of bodily autonomy, that's really, really, really important. And then it's very difficult to explain, but I think we can get a bit carried away, or there's potential to get so carried away with the fear that we think it's this massive thing in terms of keeping our kids safe online. But essentially it's parenting, just in a different space. So in terms of what they're using online and things, when I do the training, I often say, like, I live near London. I wouldn't stick a 3-year-old on the tube on their own to go off into London, but I'm holding their hand. I'm not crossing the road when the signal is the red man, even though I might cross as an adult if I can see it's safe. I'm teaching them road sense. I'm telling them to look both ways. And then there'll come a point where I might let them do a bus journey where it's 2 stops. And you're gradually training them to be safe, because what you don't want is an 18-year-old who can't walk down the street on their own without getting run over. You're teaching them gradually road safety, road sense. And for me, it's the same with the online world. You're supervising it, you're making sure, you're gradually speaking to them about the dangers. It becomes a whole integral part of everything. And gradually you're helping them to be as safe as they can be by themselves. It's parenting. That kind of takes the fear away a little bit. Now, I know it can feel more than that because it's in your home. There's all the access stuff and everything. But the more you learn, the more all of that becomes second nature.
Yeah.
So it's about educating yourself, asking others, talking to other parents, learning what you can, keeping the conversations open with your kids, being honest when this stuff comes up, and helping them to understand consequences.
Yeah.
But also the other massively key thing is that they need to know that they're safe to come to you if something goes wrong, and the first port of call is not them getting into trouble for doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
The first response is, are you okay? How can we help you? How can we support you? Or who are all the safe adults in that child's life that they could go to? It doesn't matter if it's not you as the parent as the first port of call, as long as they know who they can go to. So it's actually working on safe adults and all of that kind of thing as well. So there's lots of little things you can do.
Do you, Gabriella, in the UK, and maybe Tim, you know this, do you have some sort of hotline parents can call if it comes to that?
What do you mean if something comes up?
If something comes up, do you have some
First
sort of...
call would be police, but also your local safeguarding board. You can phone them up. You don't have to be a professional. There's something called the MASH teams, which are the multi-agency teams, your local authority people. Like if you go on to the internet and search your local authority safeguarding team, there'll be a number. I would also maybe speak to your school, because they will have somebody who's in charge of safeguarding, etc. But there is help out there for sure.
Awesome. And I would say again, in the USA, we have the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And actually on that website, there is a lot of information about grooming and online activity, online predators, what to look for. So off the top of my head, I'll just put that out there so we have a resource. But
there's resources as well. CEOP, which is the police crime online safety. I can never remember what all the stuff stands for, but they have resources for parents and things as well. There's another website called Think You Know, and there's resources for parents. There's resources for kids, all age appropriate. So there's a whole bunch of stuff out there. In fact, once this goes posts up, I can pop some of those websites underneath as well.
Yes, please do so. Share your resources. And we also want to share where educators, schools, universities, all education type people, media can find you to hire you to train them about safeguarding and what, just educate on the entire subject and what you do. Where can we find you?
So my website is gabriellarusso.co.uk. My email is really original. It's gabriella@gabriellarusso.co.uk. And if you search Gabriella Russo Safeguarding, you'll find me on TikTok, Instagram. I have a Facebook page. And I'm on Twitter. I don't use that as much these days. So, yeah.
We had some comments actually that seem to have just appeared from Olivia Thomas, and it's like, yes, she's a teacher, and she's had this, and then a very long comment. So yeah, I think a lot of what you've said, people in the coalface, so to speak, know about. But it's like, I didn't know there was local safeguarding boards. I mean, admittedly, I haven't got kids, but even so, it's kind of like there's so much.
Have, children's and adults, but a lot of them have merged together now to work together, and they work across different teams and in sort of groups and things, and work closely with the police. And actually, I do quite a bit of work with them. I'm on the training board for a couple of them.
Yeah,
Gabriella, I like that you said let your child's counselors know, let the schools know, because I know at one point something was going viral here in our local school district, the San Diego Unified School District, and the school district sent out a warning to parents to watch for this. Yeah. And so it's really important they may very well act and let everyone know.
Yeah. Definitely. So, I know of schools that are updating and doing some lessons, putting out some training, various things just off the back of this. That's
don't keep it secret. The big thing is predators want everything to stay secret. Blow it out loud when you're able. Blow it out loud. Let everyone know. Let the school districts educate parents and families.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
I mean, I think part of the issue in a way is a lot of parents have come from a history where they've obviously not been online. A lot of them still aren't really online. They've never done any social media, have never done anything on it. So they have no idea necessarily. And also, in the past, it was a lot harder for these kind of predators to be able to approach people because they would be the weirdo in the park wandering around because that's the only way they could get them. But now they can do it online.
Yeah.
So I think it's so important the work you do in terms of
like I say, I wasn't playing it down when I said like it's just parenting but online.
Yeah.
But we also need to not get ourselves too caught up in the fear of it because there is so much good with the online world. We don't want to miss that out. So it is about doing it in a balanced way.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, Tim, you and I are online all the time. We had no idea Spotify was a possibility.
Well, nor did I until last week. But, because you're just going, well, it's just a playlist thing, isn't it? So, yeah. That's why it's important to get this out there right now because, as professionals, we've all been a bit stumped by this one or surprised by it.
Yeah.
Let's alert the media. Let's tag them. This needs to get out there. And thank you for bringing this awareness to the Oh No show. Again, we had no idea. I had absolutely no idea. When you asked me if I knew anyone on Spotify, I don't remember exactly. I was like, what?
Do you know what? Because I'd spoken to several people last week and I was like, I'm sure I've told Christelle. So I was like, do you know anywhere in the States that we can kind of get this out? And you were like, I don't even know what you're talking
about. So I'm really, really happy you're bringing this awareness because this needs to be made international. This is important.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for the chance to do it because, lucky timing, considering this was booked in quite a while ago now.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it was like, I was thinking, oh, yeah, this is actually quite a good thing to talk about. Thanks. I brought it up straight away. And also because you were struggling to say what your name was at the start.
That is because I've been dealing with all of this stuff.
I know, it's clearly it's understandable, isn't it?
Yeah,
like this big thing that's happened and you got involved in.
So you're going to have me on for a third time now to talk about all the other stuff you were going to talk to me about.
We will. We're going to bring you back. We want to talk to you about your business and all of that. But this is such an important topic.
Is so important.
So thank you for raising awareness. Our friends, everyone watching, you can go scan the code here now or after the show and get all of Gabriella's information.
I think at the moment it just says your Twitter account, which is all you're saying. So
send me all
the other stuff I'll put on there, and we'll put in the show notes.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you everyone for watching, commenting. We will see you next week. Gabriella, again, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks.
this is what God requires.